Hello, once again, this is Antonio, and I'm coming at you with another exciting video. Now, the Supreme Court have decided to look closer at the abortion pills that's actually in the market. Even in states that has legalized abortions, the Supreme Court has decided to say they would deliberate to see if those abortion pills are constitutional or non-constitutional. So people that don't know, there are only three liberal justices, and even if you know, even if some of the justices cross over, you still need five to pass this. Just pass this to make this ruling. That's what I'm trying to say. But let's talk about what's actually going on in the world of abortion rights. And I really don't think it's fair that politicians has the opportunity to tell you or criminally charge you if even if you were raped, if you have a dead fetus inside of you, in some cases you still don't have the right as a woman to terminate that pregnancy. And my question is, how does that make you feel as a woman if you are a woman? And are you on the side of strict pro life or strict pro choice? I would love if you put that at the bottom in the comments. Now, for people that's living under a rock, the Supreme Court agrees to hear how states dispute over abortion pill. But this is where we're going to start off here. Roe versus Wade, 410 US 113, was passed 50 years ago. And do you think that that stopped people looking over abortions at all? No, it hasn't. It was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, in which the U.S. Court, or the Supreme Court, ruled that the Constitution of the United States generally protected the right to have an abortion. So this passed January 22nd, 1973. But this is what we're looking at here. We're looking at the stakes of what's actually going on right in front of unfolding right in Texas. And what's unfolding right here is a man who himself almost got criminally charged. And because he was governed under his peers, he got, you know, a slap on the wrist. And we'll talk about that another time. But what actually happened is the stunning threat in Texas abortion case steps up Paxton criminalization crusade, right? When a Texas court ruled that a 31-year-old woman with a non-viable pregnancy, meaning the fetus is not alive, could have an abortion despite the state's strict bans, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton responded with a brazen threat to prosecute hospitals, doctors, and anyone else. This was a man himself was just on trial that could have served time in jail himself, who I feel has has some guilt that he just escaped. Ken Paxton responded with a brazen threat. The letter he sent to Texas hospitals hours after the ruling threatened first-degree felonies that could result in life in prison was a stunning more indicative of long-standing crusade to criminalize abortion care, say legal experts and advocates. It is extraordinary that Paxson would threaten hospitals and doctors with this letter before even winning an appeal. Mary Ziegler, a UC Davis law professor who focuses on reproductive rights, told The Guardian it is a very unusual maneuver, but does certainly reflect his ultimate goal of wanting to go after abortion providers and supporters at all costs. After Paxson sent his menacing letter to Texas hospitals, the state petitioned the all Republican Texas Supreme Court. Now, think about this. They have an all Republican Supreme Court. You talk about the decks are stacked, baby. Allowing Kate Cox to assess an abortion in Texas. On Friday, the state's highest court temporarily halted the lower court order that allowed Cox to receive emergency abortion care before ruling on Monday to vacate the order that would permit her to get care in her own home state. So what Kate Cox did, she fled the state. With the risky pregnancy that threatened her health, Cox waited nearly 3 days before the court to issue a final order on Monday. Hours before the final order from the court, she finally fled out of state for abortion care at 20 weeks pregnant. Cox's attorney called Paxton strategy a fear-mongering tactic and an effort to bulldoze the legal system to ensure Cox continued to suffer. Her case underscores the aggressive nature of the state's top attorney when it comes to not only enforcing a ban on abortion, even in dire circumstances, but creating a climate of fear around abortion that targets providers. Ken Paxton was trying to say that when the judge's emergency order protected or didn't protect, but he doesn't actually have the authority to do that, said Joanna Grossman, professor at the Southern Methodist University Deedman School of Law in Dallas. His behavior here is a continuation of what he's been doing for the past 3 years and beyond, and that is enforcement through fear. His MO is to take threats, be a bully, and scare people and providers out of abortion access. The actual legal rights aren't as important to him. So, backed by the state's majority anti abortion groups, Paxton has cemented himself as a stanch anti abortion advocate since his tenure as Texas House and Senate representative, and even more as an attorney general starting in 2015, from which position he has zealously litigated against abortion rights and openly celebrated the fall of Roe versus Wade. All right, so Paxton's support and defense of 2021 Senate 8 Bill 8, a near total abortion ban that empowers private citizens to sue those who aid or abet care, create a chilling effect among abortion providers who stopped providing care months before the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe out of fear of threats to their livelihoods. The Attorney General also has successfully sued the Biden administration to fight against protections for Texas physicians who prepare abortions in emergency circumstances. So where I want to go at here, the Supreme Court agrees to hear high stakes dispute over abortion bill. So let's play this. This is interesting.
Heavy restrictions on the abortion pill mifepristone. However, those new limits can't be enforced until the legal process plays out in court. The new restrictions prohibit mail order access, limit its use to the first 7 weeks of pregnancy, and require it to be administered only if a doctor is present. The ruling is in limbo until the Supreme Court decides if it will even take up the case. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Hey there, Jessica. So tell us, how long is this legal process expected to take where the restrictions are not enforceable?
Probably a few more months. As you said very clearly, I think the Supreme Court is going to have to decide what to do. When they overturned Roe almost exactly a year ago, they said basically we're out of the business of policing these disputes regarding abortion. But here we are with this big legal issue regarding mifepristone. And so they are on their summer recess, but they can decide which cases to take. And as you said, based on a Supreme Court stay, this Fifth Circuit ruling does not go into effect. It doesn't change the law. So the Supreme Court is going to have to decide, Do we let this Fifth Circuit ruling stand, which basically means we go back to 2015 before the FDA made it easier to obtain mifepristone in 2016 and then again in 2021? Or do they take up the case potentially with another case out of Washington State, where that judge made a different decision saying we need to make it easier for people to access mifepristone? It will be really interesting to see whether or not the Supreme Court wants to wade into this again.
Well, and part of the question is, of course, using mifepristone across state lines. Jessica, what are the potential implications for that?
It's such an important question. So there is this question, number one, about whether the FDA was ever correct to approve mifepristone. Number two, whether the changes that it made in 2016 and 2021, as you said, making it easier to obtain mifepristone, saying that you don't have to go to a doctor, you can go to another healthcare prescriber, and that you can obtain mifepristone via the mail, whether or not those will stand. And then there's this question about what about mailing mifepristone across state lines and or getting mifepristone in states where that state has outlawed abortion? That sets up a battle between the federal government's power under something called the Commerce Clause to regulate interstate commerce and states' power under something called their police powers to say that we're going to ban abortions. All of that is to say, I can set up the legal battle for you. I think I know what the right answer is, but we have not had a court weigh in and say, yes, the FDA absolutely has this power under the Commerce Clause, and no, states, you cannot interfere with that power, even though you have broad so-called police powers to ban abortions.
Jessica, let's drill down on one of those issues, which is the FDA's approval and whether it was safe, whether it was right to do so. Obviously, there's a long history of mifepristone being used in the United States, but then there's also a political consideration, which is at the heart of all of this. And Senator Josh Hawley's wife is actually one of the plaintiffs in this. It's a political issue, and I'm wondering if that impacts this case in a way that goes beyond the questions of legality, of science, of FDA regulations. How does all of that impact what's happening right now?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a huge political question. Obviously, there are very high-profile people, including Senator Hawley's spouse, who are involved in this case. And it is so much of a question of mixed politics in the law. If you look just at the law, I would say this is actually a pretty easy case. And let's remember that this isn't just about mifepristone. This is about the power of the FDA to approve of drugs, to have a safety record for decades, and for people, including pharmaceutical companies and users of pharmaceuticals, to be able to rely on that approval process. But what we have here is one of the most politically charged questions, really, of our time. And so is that complicating this? I think the answer is inescapably yes, it is. That this is different from the approval of cholesterol medication or blood pressure medication. Now, should that pervade our legal reasoning? Excuse me, it shouldn't, but I think here it probably does.
Okay, so now that we have gotten to the nitty gritty of this case altogether, how do you feel about this? As a woman, or even as a man, a father should have rights as well. What if you're dating a woman and she get access to these abortion pills and she want to terminate the pregnancy? How do you feel about that? You know, or do you think that a woman's rights is a woman's rights and that's all it's all about? Those are different things that we want to know as well. Because at the end of the day, I don't want ladies having to go to a back door alley that they used to do with a hanger in themselves. And I know that sounds gross, but this is what used to happen before Roe versus Wade. Ladies used to take extreme measures when they wanted to terminate a pregnancy. What if you were drunk and was assaulted by a person that you don't know? or the person pass away and you feel that you're going to be on your own raising this child and financially you can't have it. There's so much to go into the thought processes. So well, let's go ahead and talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Surfshock. Surfshock, a comprehensive review of the VPN service in today's digital age. Privacy and security of utmost importance. With cyber criminals becoming more sophisticated and the governments monitor online activity, it's essential to take measures to protect your online identity. One way to do so is by using a virtual private network VPN service. Among the many VPNs available in the market, Surfshock is one that has been gaining popularity. So don't hesitate to get your own VPN. And thank you for everyone that tuned into this video. The link is in the description or the chat box if you do care to get your own VPN today. And once again, this is Antonio with Team Tiggio, and we'll see you next time.